Welcome back to part number 3. Now in this video we are going to build a little bit advanced port scanner that's gonna take a little bit from us and gonna spit out a lot more, right? So without further ado, I'm gonna call this advanced scanner.py and I'm gonna import socket as we have imported like in our earlier port scanners, right? And we are going to take definitely input and we're going to say the target. The goal is to build a port scanner that can scan URLs as well as IP addresses. So not just that, we want it to run concurrently, side by side or one by one. But we do not want to run that port scanner again and again and give those targets. So what we want to give the target one time and we are going to get the results when the scan is complete. So instead of target, I'm going to say targets and I'm going to take the input and I'm going to say enter targets to scan separated by comma. Now how to differentiate if there is a comma in targets. For IP address in targets, we're going to split them based on that comma. And then we are going to scan that IP address and further we are going to strip any more like spaces, because sometimes it gets spaces. Once you're gonna remove the comma, it's gonna leave a space over there. Otherwise, just scan the targets, right? Because if we have given multiple targets, it's gonna perform this little operation right here, remove the comma, remove the space. Otherwise, if we have given just a single target, it's gonna scan the targets anyways, right? With that done, we are going to move forward to define our scan function that's actually gonna perform IP scan against the ports. So I'm gonna say to avoid any kind of confusion, I'm gonna say straight away IP address. I don't want anyone to be confused, and port, right? Then we are going to try as usual to connect. I don't want to say it S only because I don't want to confuse once again. So we are going to try to connect over here and we are going to give a timeout, set timeout like our previous scanner. We're gonna give 1 second over here and we are going to try to connect with our IP address and port. But now I have something else in my head. I want to get more information than just getting the IP address and the port. I want something more. I want what service is running on that port. So I want to get the banner. So I'm going to define a function here called get banner. And I'm going to take the value, whatever it returns, and I'm going to store it, and I'm going to just store first 1024 bytes of it, right? So with our banner function sorted, I'm going to say try and get the banner 2 with the parameters of sock. If you get the results, then print out for me that port, whatever port is open, and I'm going to convert that banner into string over here, and I'm gonna say that banner. Now make sure to decode it and strip it, because it's gonna come back with bunch of weird characters, and like these characters I'm gonna show right here, like this. So to strip those things, just write dot strip, and you have to specify within quotes over here. All right, it's 1 2, yeah, 1 2 3. Otherwise, just print out that port is open. So what it's gonna do here, if we get the banner, it's gonna say that port is open and that service is running. But in case we are not able to get the service, we are going to say that just the port is open. We don't want it to, try too much harder and try to break itself, because it's gonna take more time and we do not want that. And once again, if everything fails, I don't want any errors. I just want it to pass. So we have taken the target over here, and we have run the connection over it, and we have taken the banner, and we try to print the banner here if we get. If not, we are just going to leave it like that. But what if we want to do a little bit more? As I have mentioned, our target is to make sure that we can also scan the URLs as well as IP addresses, and we want it to be multiple target running program. So if we want to give URL, we are going to import IP from IPY. It's going to help us to convert URL to IP address, and we're going to define a little function here called scan, because this is going to specify whether we are scanning an IP address or a URL. So we're gonna say the variable called converted IP, because anything that's not IP is gonna be converted to IP. and we're gonna say check IP, and then we have to give this function too over here, how to check the target, right? So before we do that, I'm going to define a function here called check IP. And what do we give here? We give IP, right? So within that function, we are going to try to say IP. First take the IP and return IP. Except, now we want it to convert, right? So if we accept and pass, it's gonna just take the IP and return the IP. And if you're gonna give the URL, it's gonna pass. So we want it to give us the value error over here and return what we want. We want to return IP of the URL. So we're gonna say socket dot get host by name, right? So that's our little function that is going to return IP address if we have given a host name over here or a URL over here. So let's get back to our function called scan, and next we are going to initialize some sort of, like, we are going to print that something like, put it a new line, and we're gonna say scanning in progress, and we're gonna mention our whatever the target is here. If we are scanning IP, it's gonna specify the IP. If we are scanning a URL, it's gonna specify the URL over here. And most importantly, we have to specify ports, because if we don't specify that, it wouldn't know what to scan, where to scan. So instead of giving my program a headache, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna tell that please do not start with port 0 because there is a none. Start with port 1 and go till port 1000, and take those arguments and run it. That means take the converted IP and the port and run it anyways. So I guess the program is complete. Let's save it. Yes, and try to run it. Classic mistake. Google.com and my IP address. So it is taking a bit of our time, but at least it is returning the results for us. All right, I ran out of patience right here, so I'm just gonna kill it and And you know what? I am going to say, instead of going through all 1000 ports, please scan just 100 ports. You can specify all 65,536 ports over here. It's gonna take a bit of time, but anyhow, you've got the idea. I want to run it once again. Let's give the IP address first and then say google.com. As we have promised ourselves that we are going to get the port, we are going to get the status, and we are going to know more about the service. So as you can see over here, my port 22 on the router is open, and the SSH version is 2.0 dropbear 2012.55, and it's still looking for the results from Google. Alright, so we are back with the results. So I've changed the ports from 1000 to 100. It scanned only 100. So I have given you 3 examples in all those 3 videos. The basic one, a little bit faster with concurrent and threading. So now it's up to you how you can implement the concurrent threading and the thread pool executors into this program over here called Advanced Scanner and make it a bit more faster, right? So these were like 3 different kinds of port scanners that we can build. We promised ourselves that since we cannot find nmap, we do not want to back off, and we want to get more information about the network. So sometimes it seems impossible. All you have to do is to look other way and try to find out the proper skill that you have learned over the time, right? So keep this in your backpack. Once you get into the situation like that, you're gonna know what you have to do. If you cannot find nmap, if you do have to run port scanner somehow, you can take the smallest port scanner with 5-6 lines like we have built right here called fastscanner.py. It's, I guess, like 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10, like 12 lines of code, and it's super easy. Even if you can memorize it, you will keep it in your head all of the times whenever you need it, right? So I hope it helped you a lot and you have learned something new. If you have, please leave a feedback, and I'm gonna see you in the next video.